And a very big hello to you all and welcome to another governance update from VLGA Connect with Stephen Cooper joining us. Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Chris. Has something happened this week?
It's like heaven for governance this week. I don't know where to look. There's the US election, there's all the council elections, there's some other association elections all going on at the same time. It's like Christmas has come just a tad early.
And people say governance is boring. It doesn't get any better than this, Chris.
No, I assume you're keeping a close eye on what's happening across in the US of A.
I just might have had the occasional peak during the day, Chris. Yes, still counting.
And for me, it's the occasional peak in the middle of the night. I haven't been able to sleep. It's so exciting, Stephen. But let's talk about matters closer to home. The council elections they're being drip fed, let's be honest, across the week. They're not all in yet, but we are seeing some interesting trends. Lots of incumbents obviously being returned, some not. A real trend towards female-dominated councils in metropolitan areas, not so much in rurals. Just a couple of the trends that I'm picking up. What are you noticing most, Steve?
I think it's similar to you, Chris, and interesting with the election of female candidates. The information I got as of yesterday, which was Thursday, was that something in the order of 40 to 41% of returned candidates being female, which is an increase on last time round. Some really stellar examples. Knox City Council, 9 out of 10 of the new council female councillors. So yeah, particularly in the metro area is very strong. I think the other thing I noticed, Chris, was the distinction, and this always happens, that sometimes candidates relying on preferences, leapfrogging over other candidates to get out over the line, which sort of would indicate either a strong community awareness or really good organisation in terms of managing preferences. Compare and contrast from times other candidates. I know of one high-profile candidate who polled 15% of the primary vote, needed 25% in about a 10-horse race, fell short. So preferences matter.
Really interesting, isn't it? Because you look at, and of course we haven't seen this officially. We've had to rely on what some candidates have been posting via scrutineers, etc. You look at that first primary vote count, and you often tend to think, oh, okay, well, that person, they should be safe. And then there's always an example, like you've just said, where the preferences don't flow their way, and you think, how did that happen?
How did that happen? And you have to go to that little line on the VEC website which says distribution of preferences here, with a little link to an Excel spreadsheet, and sort of minimise it so it all fits on the screen, Chris.
Steve, there's quite a bit of angst out there too. I said frustration is probably the word, with the way it's coming through in a drip-fed nature, and those scrutineer sort of views of how voting's going haven't been more publicly available. Is that a problem? Do you think is it a COVID thing, or is this the way it's going to be, do you think, from now on?
I don't know officially, Chris. I am presuming it's a COVID thing, and I do know that the VEC have had to overlay COVID-safe procedures onto every element of its performance, and I can only presume that that has sucked out resources that would have otherwise been given to what we would normally see, where the results as they're available are uploaded. So in the past we've been able to see progress counts. I think, Chris, in that sense, I have a huge amount of faith in the VEC count system, unlike that election over the ditch. And so the result will be the result, because once the ballots are received, nothing changes. So I think it's just more that those of us who are really interested get some frustration, because, we'd like to know earlier, which has probably prompted us to talk about another matter, Chris.
Well, yeah, just before that, I've heard a couple of whispers that there are some recounts being requested in some council areas where the counts have been really tight. I mean, that always happens. Of more concern is what's being reported out of Moreland and referred to VicPol, and that is this allegation of vote tampering. There's another Stephen Cooper out there that I heard. I don't know if you know this. I heard on ABC Radio this week. Very measured, authoritative sounding fellow that was speaking about that case. Do you know who that guy is? Same name.
Yes, funny about that. In my other life, I may have done a little gig on ABC Radio to talk
it was
about
you.
that. So,
That was you. Oh, okay.
I don't know where those resonant tones on the ABC came from, Chris, but thanks for that.
Oh, they must have this machine that makes you sound.
Who knew? I didn't know where you were going there. I think, Chris, that I go back to the point I made earlier that I'm really comforted by the fact that the VEC have the power to ask VCAT to conduct a review into the outcome of an election, and the VEC is sufficiently concerned about these reports, which have appeared on multiple media outlets. And the suggestion seems to be that voting papers have gone missing, have been submitted with a signature, and then subsequently people who have been waiting for their ballot papers have asked the VEC for a paper, and it's obviously been identified that, same name twice. Yeah. So props to the VEC for following that. And it goes without saying, it is the most egregious of electoral offences if it's proven. And the penalty under the Local Government Act, 600 penalty units, so close to $100,000 for the maximum offence. And we will let that process take its course, presumably, Chris.
Very significant. So possible or likely outcomes, though, is that it affects one ward, as I understand it, and it could mean a by-election would need to be held if it's determined that it's affected the outcome.
Exactly. And it's corrosive that if the view is widely held that elections can be tampered with in that sort of way, then that could infiltrate state, federal elections. It absolutely strikes at the heart of our democracy. And I know it was, I saw a quote in one of the newspapers today that, the crime squad, the fraud squad, the police are taking this very seriously, and good on them for doing that. Go hard on the investigation, I say.
Absolutely. I second that. Absolutely want to see them take that with the utmost of seriousness. So, as you say, we'll let the process run its course. We're watching with great interest, naturally. So a couple of other quick notes relating to IBAC Operation Sandon. It's about to start hearing again, or already has started? I've been a bit distracted this week.
It starts again next week, Chris.
Next week, right. Thank you.
And interestingly, the Commissioner has indicated that it will broaden its scope to look at planning more generally across the state of Victoria. There are multiple witnesses apparently lined up. I think one of the things that about IBAC public hearings is that it is possible to do your work and have them running in the background, and I'd recommend that to anyone because this sort of the implications, particularly with a group of new councillors and even returning councillors who can sometimes be blindsided, as to the sometimes insidious nature as to how relationships with, say, for example, the development community can play out in decisions of the council. It's really important that people recognise what can happen and, the consequences of that. So keep a close eye.
Well, I hope I'll be in the position to take CNN off my second screen permanently in the corner of the office and replace it with that next week. But, my confidence is dwindling with every passing hour.
Your multitasking might be tested, Chris.
And just quickly, Steve, before I let you go, there's an IBAC paper on data handling that's caught your eye. A couple of takeaways from that.
Absolutely. The third in a series, Chris. So IBAC have released papers on information management in relation to the state government and to the police, and this week released a paper on local government. Worth a read for anyone working in the sector, including councillors. A couple of key takeaways. IBAC is suggesting that the reportage of information misuse is probably, there's probably an element of underreporting, I suppose. A, because the systems don't necessarily capture information misuse, or B, because from time to time people aren't alert to the seriousness. And there's been some well-publicised examples that have resulted in prosecutions in the past where people have misused information and passed confidential information on to an external party because of a misguided kind of ethical view that there's a public interest in passing that information on. And the reality is that confidential information is confidential information, and there's no decision that any of us can make to actually change that. Sometimes that misuse is found in relation to investigations into other matters, which sort of indicates that there's a bit of a nexus between how information is managed and the culture of organisations. We all need to understand that misuse is an enabler to other forms of corruption. And therefore, and also, sorry, it's pointed to particularly, strangely enough, town planning and procurement as processes where information that's made available to external parties can influence what goes into their pockets. So we need to be really alert to those areas.
Okay, so we recommend that that people take a look at that. Data handling from IBAC. Thank you.
A must read.
A must read indeed. All right, at the time of recording, we haven't quite done our next live panel, but at the time of you watching this, we probably have done it on governance, building trust and support for new councillors with John Lynch and Ross Millard from the Inspectorate and Blago Namoski from Nillumbik Shire. And that Stephen Cooper guy that's been doing the rounds of media is on this one as well. So look out for that one if you weren't in it live and you remember you may like to access the recording. Thank you, Steve.
Via the LG Pro website. Thanks, Chris. Good to talk.
Indeed. Stephen Cooper from the VLGA and Civic Mind joining us for our weekly governance update. And we'll see you again soon.